Supreme Shadow, Supreme Dawn, Part 1. One day, Jean Valjean went downstairs, took 3 steps into the street, sat down upon a stone block, upon that same block where Gavroche, on the night of 5th of June, had found him musing. He remained there a few minutes, then went upstairs again. This was the last oscillation of the pendulum. The next day he did not leave his room. The day after he did not leave his bed. His portress, who prepared his frugal meal, some cabbage, a few potatoes with a little pork, looked into the brown earthen plate and exclaimed, "Why, you didn't eat anything yesterday, poor dear man. To leave me my whole plateful without touching it, my coleslaw, which was so good." Jean Valjean took the old woman's hand. "I promise to eat it," he said, in his most benevolent voice. "I'm not satisfied with you," answered the portress. Jean Valjean scarcely ever saw any other human being than this good woman. There are streets in Paris in which nobody walks, and houses into which nobody comes. He was in one of those streets, and in one of those houses. While he still went out, he had brought of a brazier, for a few sous, a little copper crucifix, which he had hung upon a nail before his bed. The cross is always good to look upon. A week elapsed, and Jean Valjean had not taken a step in his room. He was still in bed. The portress said to her husband, "The good man upstairs does not get up any more. He does not eat any more. He won't last long. He has trouble, he has. Nobody can get it out of my head that his daughter has made a bad match." She saw a physician of the quarter, passing at the end of the street. She took it upon herself to beg him to go up. "It's on the second floor," said she to him. "You'll have nothing to do but to go in, as the good man does not stir from his bed now. The key is in the door all the time." The physician saw Jean Valjean and spoke with him. When he came down, the portress questioned him. "Well, doctor?" "Your sick man is very sick." "What is the matter with him?" "Everything and nothing. He is a man who, to all appearances, has lost some dear friend. People die of that." "What did he tell you?" "He told me that he was well." "Will you come again, doctor?" "Yes," answered the physician, "but another than I must come again." One evening, Part 2. One evening, Jean Valjean had difficulty in raising himself upon his elbow. He felt his wrist and found no pulse. His breathing was short, and stopped at intervals. He realized that he was weaker than he had been before. Then, undoubtedly under the pressure of some supreme desire, he made an effort, sat up in bed, and dressed himself. He was obliged to stop several times while dressing. The mere effort of putting on his waistcoat made the sweat roll down his forehead. He opened the valise and took out Cosette's suit. He spread it out upon his bed. The bishop's candlesticks were in their place on the mantel. He took 2 wax tapers from a drawer and put them into the candlesticks. Then, although it was still broad daylight, it was in summer, he lighted them. We sometimes see torches lighted thus in broad day, in rooms where the dead lie. Each step that he took in going from one piece of furniture to another exhausted him, and he was obliged to sit down. It was not ordinary fatigue, which spends the strength that it may be renewed. It was the remnant of possible motion. It was exhausted life pressed out drop by drop in overwhelming efforts, never to be made again. One of the chairs upon which he sank was standing before that mirror so fateful for him, so providential for Marius, in which he had read Cosette's note, reversed on the blotter. He saw himself in this mirror, and did not recognize himself. He was 80 years old. Before Marius' marriage, one would hardly have thought him 50. This year had counted 30. What was now upon his forehead was not the wrinkle of age, it was the mysterious mark of death. You perceived it on the impress of the relentless talon. His cheeks were sunken. The skin of his face were of that color which suggests the idea of the earth already above it. The corners of his mouth were depressed as in that mask which the ancients sculptured upon tombs. He looked at the hollowness with a look of reproach. You would have said it was one of those grand tragic beings who rise in judgment. He was in that condition, the last phase of dejection, in which sorrow no longer flows. It is, so to speak, coagulated. The soul is covered, as if with a clot of despair. Night had come. Suddenly he shivered. He felt that the chill was coming. "Oh!" exclaimed he within himself, pitiful cries heard by God alone. "It is all over. I shall never see her more. She has a smile which has passed over me. I am going to enter into the night without even seeing her again. Oh, a minute, an instant, to hear her voice, to touch her dress, to look at her, the angel, and then to die. It is nothing to die. but it is dreadful to die without seeing her. She would smile upon me. She would say a word to me. Would that harm anybody? No. It is over forever. Here I am, all alone. My God, I shall never see her again. At this moment, there was a rap at his door. Part 3. That very day, or rather that very evening, just as Marius had left the table and retired into his office, having a bundle of papers to study over, Basque had handed him a letter saying, "The person who wrote this letter is in the antechamber." He broke the seal and read, "Monsieur Baron, if the Supreme Being had given me the talents for it, I could have been Baron Thénard, member of the Institute Academy of Sciences. But I am not so. I merely bear the same name that he does. Happy if this remembrance commends me to the excellence of your bounties. The benefit with which you honor me will be reciprocal. I am in possession of a secret concerning an individual. This individual concerns you. I hold the secret at your disposition, desiring to have the honor of being useful to you. I will give you by the simple means of driving from your honorable family this individual who has no right in it. Madame the Baroness being of high birth, the sanctity of virtue could not cohabit longer with crime without abdicating. I attend in the antechamber on the orders of Monsieur the Baron with respect." The letter was signed Thénard. This signature was not a false one. It was only a little abridged. Besides, the rigmarole and the orthography completed the revelation. The certificate of origin was perfect. There was no doubt possible. The emotion of Marius was deep. After the feeling of surprise, he had a feeling of happiness. Let him now find that other man whom he sought, the man who had saved him, Marius, and he would have nothing more to wish. He opened one of his secretary drawers, took out some banknotes, put them in his pockets, closed the secretary, and rang. Basque appeared. "Show him in," said Marius. Basque announced, "Monsieur Thénard." A man entered. A new surprise for Marius. The man who came in was perfectly unknown to him. This man, old withal, had a large nose, his chin in his cravat, green spectacles with double shade of green silk over his eyes, his hair polished and smoothed down, his forehead close to the eyebrows like the wigs of English coachmen in high life. His hair was grey. He was dressed in black from head to foot, in a well-worn but tidy black. A bunch of trinkets hanging from his fob suggested a watch. He held an old hat in his hand. He walked with a stoop, and the crook of his back increased the lowliness of his bow. Marius' disappointment, on seeing another man enter than the one he was expecting, turned into dislike toward the newcomer. He examined him from head to foot, while the personage bowed without measure, and asked him in a sharp tone, "What do you want?" The stranger thrust his hands into his fobs, raised his head without straightening his backbone, but scrutinizing Marius in his turn with the green gaze of his spectacles. "Monsieur the Baron, I will explain. I have a secret to tell you." "A secret?" "A secret." "Go on." "Monsieur Baron, you have in your house a robber and an assassin." Marius shuddered. "In my house? No," said he. The stranger, imperturbable, brushed his hat with his sleeve and continued, "I am going to tell you his true name and to tell you it for nothing." "I'm listening." "His name is Jean Valjean." "I know it." "I am going to tell you also for nothing who he is." "Say on." "He is an old convict." "I know it." "You know it, since I have had the honor of telling you." "No, I knew it before." The stranger resumed with a smile. "I do not permit myself to contradict Monsieur the Baron. At all events, you must see that I am informed. Now, what I have to acquaint you with is known to myself alone." Marius looked at him steadily. "I know your extraordinary secret, just as I knew Jean Valjean's name, just as I know your name." "My name?" "Yes." "That is not difficult, Monsieur Baron. I have had the honor of writing it to you and telling it to you. Thénard." "Dieu." "Eh?" "Thénardier." "Who is that?" In danger, the porcupine bristles. The beetle feigns death. The old guard forms a square. This man began to laugh. Marius, taking a banknote from his pocket, threw it in his face. "Thanks, pardon, 500 thanks, Monsieur Baron." And the man, bewildered, bowing, catching the note, examined it. 500 francs, he repeated in astonishment, and then he stammered out in an undertone. A serious affair for you. Then bluntly, well, so be it, exclaimed he. Let us make ourselves comfortable. And with the agility of a monkey, throwing his hair off backward, pulling off his spectacles, he took off his countenance as one takes off his hat. His eye kindled, his forehead uneven, ravined, humped in spots, hideously wrinkled at the top, emerged. His nose became as sharp as a beak. The fierce and cunning profile of the man of prey appeared again. Monsieur the Baron is infallible, he said in a clear voice, from which all nasality had disappeared. I am Thénardier. And he straightened his bent back. In Thénardier's opinion, the conversation with Marius had not yet commenced. He had been obliged to retreat, to modify his strategy, to abandon a position, to change his base, but nothing essential was yet lost, and he had 500 francs in his pocket. After saying, I am Thénardier, he waited. Marius interrupted the silence. Thénardier, I have told you your name. Now your secret, what you came to make known to me. Do you want me to tell you that? I too have my means of information. You shall see that I know more about it than you do. Jean Valjean, as you have said, is an assassin and a robber. A robber because he robbed a rich manufacturer, Monsieur Madeleine, whose ruin he caused. An assassin because he assassinated the police officer, Javert. Thénardier cast upon Marius the sovereign glance of a beaten man, who lays hold on victory again, and who has just recovered in 1 minute all the ground which he had lost. But the smile returned immediately. The inferior before the superior can only have a skulking triumph. Thénardier merely said to Marius, Monsieur Baron, we are on the wrong track. What? Replied Marius. Do you deny that? These are facts. They are chimeras. The confidence with which Monsieur the Baron honours me makes it my duty to tell him so. Before all things, truth and justice, I do not like to see people accused unjustly. Monsieur Baron, Jean Valjean never robbed Monsieur Madeleine, and Jean Valjean never killed Javert. You speak strongly. How is that? For 2 reasons. What are they? Tell me. The first is this. He did not rob Monsieur Madeleine, since it is Jean Valjean himself who was Monsieur Madeleine. What is it that you are telling me? And the second is this. He did not assassinate Javert, since Javert himself killed Javert. What do you mean? That Javert committed suicide. Prove it! Prove it! Cried Marius beside himself. Thénardier resumed, scanning his phrase in the fashion of an ancient Alexandrine. The police officer Javert was found drowned under a boat by the Pont au Change. But prove it now. Thénardier took from his pocket a large envelope of grey paper, which seemed to contain folded sheets of different sizes. I have my documents, said he with calmness. When I speak, I have the proofs. Not manuscript proofs. Writing is suspicion. Writing is complacent. But proofs in print. While speaking, Thénardier took out of the envelope 2 newspapers, yellow, faded, and strongly saturated with tobacco. One of these 2 newspapers, broken at all the folds, and falling in square pieces, seemed much older than the other. 2 facts, 2 proofs, said Thénardier, and unfolding the 2 papers, he handed them to Marius. One, the oldest, a copy of the Drapeau Blanc of the 25th of July, 1823, established the identity of Monsieur Madeleine and Jean Valjean. The other, a Moniteur of the 15th of June, 1832, verified the suicide of Javert, adding that it appeared from a verbal report made by Javert to the prefect that, taken prisoner in the barricade of the Rue de la Chanvrerie, he had owed his life to the magnanimity of an insurgent who, though he had him at the muzzle of his pistol, instead of blowing out his brains, had fired into the air. Marius read. There was evidence, certain date, unquestionable proof. Jean Valjean, suddenly growing grand, arose from the cloud. Marius could not restrain a cry of joy. Well then, this unhappy man is a wonderful man. All this fortune was really his own. He is Madeleine, the providence of a whole region. He is Jean Valjean, the saviour of Javert. He is a hero. He is a saint. He is not a saint, and he is not a hero, said Thénardier. He is an assassin and a robber. He added with the tone of a man who begins to feel some authority in himself. Let us be calm. Robber, assassin. These words, which Marius supposed were gone, yet which came back, fell upon him like a shower of ice. Again? Said he. Monsieur Baron, on the 6th of June, 1832, about a year ago, the day of the emeute, a man was in the grand sewer of Paris, near where the sewer empties into the Seine, between the bridge of the Invalides and the bridge of Vienna." Marius suddenly drew his chair near Thénardier's. Thénardier noticed this movement and continued with the deliberation of a speaker who holds his interlocutor fast and who feels the palpitation of his adversary between his words. This man, compelled to conceal himself, This man, compelled to conceal himself for reasons foreign to politics, however, had taken the sewer for his dwelling and had a key to it. It was, I repeat it, the 6th of June. It might have been 8 o'clock in the evening. The man heard a noise in the sewer. Very much surprised, he hid himself and watched. It was a sound of steps. Somebody was walking in the darkness. Somebody was coming in his direction. Strange to say, there was another man in the sewer beside him. The grating of the outlet of the sewer was not far off. A little light which came from it enabled him to recognize the newcomer, and to see that this man was carrying something on his back. He walked bent over. The man who was walking bent over was an old convict, and what he was carrying upon his shoulders was a corpse. Assassination in flagrante delicto, if ever there was such a thing. As for the robbery, it follows, of course. Nobody kills a man for nothing. This convict was going to throw his corpse into the river. Marius' chair drew still nearer. Thénardier took advantage of it to draw a long breath. He continued. Monsieur Baron, a sewer is not the Champ de Mars. One lacks everything there, even room. When two men are in a sewer, they must meet each other. That is what happened. The resident and the traveller were compelled to say good day to each other, to their mutual regret. The traveller said to the resident, "You see what I have on my back. I must get out. You have the key. Give it to me." This convict was a man of fearful strength. There was no refusing him. Still, he who had the key parleyed, merely to gain time. He examined the dead man, but could see nothing, except that he was young, well dressed, apparently a rich man, and all disfigured with blood. While he was talking, he found means to cut off and tear off from behind, without his assassin perceiving it, a piece of the assassinated man's coat. A piece of evidence, you understand. Means of getting trace of the affair, and proving the crime upon the criminal. He put this piece of evidence in his pocket, after which he opened the grating, let the man out with his encumbrance on his back, shut the grating again, and escaped, little caring to be mixed up with the remainder of the adventure, and especially desiring not to be present when the assassin should throw the assassinated man into the river. You understand now. He who was carrying the corpse was Jean Valjean, and he who had the key is now speaking to you, and the piece of the coat. Thénardier finished the phrase by drawing from his pocket and holding up, on a level with his eyes, between his thumbs and his forefingers, a strip of ragged black cloth, covered with dark stains. Marius had risen, pale, hardly breathing, his eye fixed upon the scrap of black cloth. And without uttering a word, without losing sight of this rag, he retreated to the wall, and with his right hand stretched behind him, groped about for a key which was in the lock of a closet near the chimney. He found this key, opened the closet, and thrust his arm into it without looking, and without removing his startled eyes from the fragment that Thénardier held up. Meanwhile, Thénardier continued. Monsieur Baron, I have the strongest reasons to believe that the assassinated young man was an opulent stranger drawn into a snare by Jean Valjean, and the bearer of an enormous sum.
The young man was myself, and there is the coat,
cried Marius, and he threw an old black coat covered with blood upon the carpet. Then, snatching the fragment from Thénardier's hands, he bent down over the coat, applied the piece to the cut shirt. The edges fitted exactly, and the strip completed the coat. Thénardier was petrified. He thought this, "I'm floored." Marius rose up, quivering, desperate, flashing. He felt in his pocket and walked furious toward Thénardier, offering him and almost pushing into his face his fistful of 500 and 1,000-franc notes.
"You are a wretch. You are a liar, a slanderer, a scoundrel. You came to accuse this man. You have justified him. You wanted to destroy him. You have succeeded only in glorifying him. And it is you who are a robber. And it is you who are an assassin. I saw you, Thénardier, Jondrette, in that den on the Boulevard de l'Hôpital. I know enough about you to send you to the galleys and further even if I wished. Here, there are 1,000 francs, braggart that you are."
And he threw a bill for 1,000 francs to Thénardier.
"Ah, Jondrette, Thénardier, vile knave, let this be a lesson to you, peddler of secrets, trader in mysteries, fumbler in the dark, wretch, take these 500 francs and leave this place. Go, out of my sight. Be happy only, that is all I desire. Ah, monster, there are 3,000 francs more. Take them. You will start tomorrow for America. I will see to your departure, bandit, and I will count out to you then 20,000 francs. Go and get hung elsewhere."
Monsieur Baron, answered Thénardier, bowing to the ground. Eternal gratitude. And Thénardier went out, comprehending nothing, astounded, and transported with this sweet crushing under sacks of gold, with his thunderbolt bursting upon his head in blank banknotes. Thunderstruck he was, but happy also, and he would have been very sorry to have had a lightning rod against that thunderbolt. Let us finish with this man at once. 2 days after the events which we are now relating, he left, through Marius' care, for America, under a false name, with his daughter Azelma, provided with a draft upon New York for 20,000 francs. Thénardier, the moral misery of Thénardier, the broken-down bourgeois, was irredeemable. He was in America what he had been in Europe. The touch of a wicked man is often enough to corrupt a good deed, and make an evil result spring from it. With Marius' money, Thénardier became a slaver. As soon as Thénardier was outdoors, Marius ran to the garden where Cosette was walking.
Cosette, Cosette, cried he. Come, come quick. Let us go. Basque, a fiacre. Cosette, come. Oh, my God, it was he who saved my life. Let us not lose a minute. Put on your shawl.
Cosette thought him mad and obeyed. He did not breathe. He put his hand upon his heart to repress its beating. He walked to and fro with rapid strides. He embraced Cosette.
Oh, Cosette, I am an unhappy man,
said he. Marius was in a maze. He began to see in this Jean Valjean a strangely lofty and saddened form. An unparalleled virtue appeared before him, supreme and mild, humble in its immensity. The convict was transfigured into Christ. Marius was bewildered by this marvel. He did not know exactly what he saw, but it was grand. In a moment, a fiacre was at the door. Marius helped Cosette in, and sprang in himself.
Driver, he said, Rue de la Marmée, number 7.
The fiacre started.